Did you all know that 89% of people feel green guilt? Can you just raise your hands if you're one of those people who feels green guilt? Because I know I do. And do you know what I just did then? I just went, fuck, I need to bring up a sustainable water bottle because we're about to do Leap to Lead into sustainability. Rachel's got one as well. So this is an important topic. We're just getting to grips with what is sustainability. We as leaders are trying to make sure we are sustainable. So I'm delighted to welcome on stage. We have Rachel Powney from Multilocal and we have Marcela Oguntoye from Seen This. Please welcome them on stage as we leap to lead sustainably. So welcome. If I can get everybody then to come a little bit further forward, because we're going to be enveloped here as we do this. So I mentioned there that this is a problem that we feel green guilt. So there's 89% of us that do that. Just what are we doing? Are we doing enough? Then I'm going to layer on another quick stat before I let you welcome yourselves. And this is the fact that as an internet advertising, we're contributing 20% towards carbon emissions. We are doing damage unless we start working towards being more sustainable and leading sustainably. I've got two incredible speakers here who are going to talk through this and I'm going to interrogate them on this. So please, first up, if you can introduce yourselves, and also I would like you to say what sustainability means to you and what interests you most about it. So hit it first, Rachel.
Thanks, Julia. And I do apologise. I did realise that I have a plastic cup up here, but they had nothing else, and I'm sorry. Green guilt. So my name is Rachel Powney. I'm the VP of Marketing for Multilocal. We specialise in audience curation, and what that is, for those of you who don't know, and why I'm up here today, is that we recategorise publisher websites across the open web. We aggregate that with tons of audience first and third party data in order to help us to better understand where to play the most optimal places to place advertising that's also sustainable as well. So we're working twofold to make advertising greener as well. When it comes to sustainability, what it means to me is really about what can we do to make a better environment for a better world for the future generation, really. And I think for me, when I've been working in advertising now for 20 years, and I had no awareness of what the impact digital advertising was having on the environment, to be honest. And then someone told me once about a stat which absolutely shocked me, and that was it was that one digital campaign makes the same amount of carbon as 7 people in 1 year. And that absolutely shocked me, because having worked in digital advertising and looking...
Could you just say that again, just to let it sink in?
Yeah.
That was quite a big stat.
It was a big stat. So one digital campaign emits the same amount of carbon as 7 people in 1 year.
Wow.
Incredible,
slightly
right?
mind blown there.
Right. It's mind-blowing. And working in programmatic and seeing how many campaigns are taking place, and that was in one SSP I was working with at the time, it absolutely shocked me, and I thought, this is a problem. This is a real problem. And it's been great to see, I think, over the years, how much this issue has become top of the agenda for companies, to be honest, especially in our industry.
And so it should be as well. I mean, that's
100%.
What we're pushing here today. You know, we have founders in the room, we have people in the room, we have all of us able to do our bit. Marcela, coming to you, just introduce yourself. And the same really question, what interests you most about sustainability? And almost why are you here to be able to talk about what you're doing, what your company's doing?
Absolutely, thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Marcela Oguntoye. I work at Seen This. I'm a commercial operations director there. I joined the company 3 years ago now, and when I first joined up, sustainability in digital advertising was not a big topic. There wasn't a huge amount of understanding about what happens in the emissions space when it comes to digital. But as my time with the company was evolving, we had seen this, basically what we offer is streaming solutions which replace the legacy download technology, and that removes the unnecessary data from the content delivery, while it also improves all of these incredible performance metrics. So we started to play around with this idea and realized that we've got a really powerful hypothesis where if we take the assumption that we are only delivering the content that is immediately necessary for the user in that moment in time, which perfectly fits their environment and connectivity and device, surely we are also reducing the unnecessary amount of data that is delivered to that end user. This then led into an enormous sustainability research, which indeed confirmed our hypotheses, and we delivered a really impactful white paper which goes into, if you like a rabbit hole, it goes down a rabbit hole on what happens to data transfers, and the journey a single campaign creative takes through the infrastructure of internet, and what that costs in terms of CO2 emissions. And I was hooked. So that was a very empowering moment for the company, and it really has made our positioning within the advertising space incredibly powerful.
I think it's that. So it's about the implications. You know, you've seen it and it's struck a chord. You've just given us that stat. I'm slightly going to go off at a tangent because I had the pleasure of interviewing Fern McCann yesterday. And I was explaining to her, I was getting her to wear the Multilocal cap that you'll see about town, this pink cap, and we're running an Instagram campaign on it. And she said, what does Multilocal do? And I said, it's about curation. But what is curation? Because obviously Fern McCann is a celebrity, so I was explaining it. And I was saying it's about curating your audiences, and it's being able to understand and make sure there's no wastage. And she said, oh, that's more sustainable. And I was like, holy shit, she knows quite a bit about this. But Rachel, is it that? I mean, is that why, am I just simplifying it too much? I obviously simplified it yesterday.
No, that's great, and it's good to hear that Fern knows, understands.
Should have got it on camera. I should have bloody got it on camera.
Yes, that is really what it has been designed to solve. What you've got to remember, like in the open web and the open auction, there are millions and trillions of bid transactions which are taking place to essentially deliver one single impression. And that's a huge amount of wastage that happens. And all of that takes up power and data and infrastructure. And we're in a situation now as well that there is so much supply out there and not enough demand, which is leading to even more wastage that's out there. So what audience curation aims to do is essentially, to be honest, do what programmatic should be doing, but isn't, to be honestly. And that is having a much more targeted approach to advertising. So we look at publisher websites across the open web. We do a lot of research on the types of content they have, how they perform. We also work with a lot of first-party data and third-party data, and we aggregate this all together. And what that essentially leads to is that it naturally lowers the amount of bid transactions needed to deliver that one single impression. So it's really just about being a lot more targeted and smarter across the open web, and that's essentially what audience creation does.
I mean, when you make it sound so simple, you think that this should be getting better. We should be getting better at this. Marcela, do you think that we are? Or are we seeing it, there's still a chance that the trend is continuing to worsen? Are we seeing a more sustainable future? Can we see it? Can you envisage it?
I am certainly optimistic. And I see the changes in uptake, changes in conversations and sentiment. But I think with anything and everything that is new and innovative, it really takes a special kind of brand, a special kind of client that truly listens and is truly committed to not look away, because I think that's the tendency once you realize the magnitude of the problem, but to actually make the commitment to also lean into scope 3 emissions. And also what I'm seeing is that what brands are what we're helping brands achieve is the feeling of empowerment by truly understanding where the emissions occur, and also having access to dashboards which allow them to first estimate. For example, I know as a brand, I have a campaign once every 3 weeks, which has got 300 million impressions, and the file size associated with the video and the image is of certain megabytes. I can then really clearly calculate what my CO2 emissions are going to look like. From there, brands can really clearly set out targets, goals, and be absolutely deliberate about what they what they lean into, what they plan to do, and how they plan to conduct the media campaigns for the quarter. So there is a definite shift. It takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of realigning to the brands and the agencies' KPIs. As we all know, sustainability is not a number one KPI in the media spend currently, but it's changing. And another thing that Cindy's also delivers is huge improvements in performance. And everyone wants great performing campaigns. Everyone wants more cost-effective campaigns, which is what we also do. And hey ho, cherry on the cake, it's also sustainable.
So it works in both ways. And I was going to say, we're talking here, and you were just moving into that. Companies need to take more responsibilities. Companies can act. Could you just raise your hand if you believe the company you're at is doing their bit for and being sustainable, either in the ad trading or how they're behaving? Okay, so there are companies you do think they're working in that right direction. So this is to, I think, to both of you actually, what are the simple actions companies can take? Now, I know it can be, sustainability covers so many things, but I think in this instance we'll focus on ad trading, but equally layer on other things they could do to be more sustainable. Rachel first.
Yeah, sure. So I think, and by the way, I'm not a sustainability expert by any means, and I'm so pleased to say that I think it's becoming a lot more mainstream, which it should do. We need experts to help guide us and give us the frameworks, absolutely, but everyone should be doing their bit in terms of trying to understand and learn and read about it, and there's a lot more accessibility now to courses that can help you do this. But in terms of what companies can do, so, recently Ad Net Zero and GARM announced their framework, which I think is great, the first version of their framework to help sustainability be a lot more easier, accountable, give you guidelines and framework, which I think a lot of companies have struggled with, to be honest. There's so much noise out there around sustainability, and you can easily jump on the bandwagon without really trying to really understand what your company's capabilities are. So a good framework that we look at is those 3 scopes, so scope 1, 2, and 3 that you need to look at. Now, the ad tech industry need to really focus on scope 3, to your point, because quite rightly so, like agencies and brands that have their own, or brands in particular that have their own sustainable KPIs, will be putting pressure on the ad tech industry to make sure the ads that are being delivered are doing so sustainably. So I think that's a real focus for ad tech companies in particular, and working with partners who are really looking at how to reduce carbon footprint, how to make that process a lot more carbon efficient. And in terms of your own company, I think, we've recently joined Ad Net Zero actually as a company, which is great. And I'm part of the working group. So there's a group of about 5 or 6 of us who are involved with this in looking at what's our roadmap going to look like for us to reach Ad Net Zero emissions by 2030. And it's not going to be an easy process. I don't know what I'm doing, to be honest, through a lot of it. And I don't think many of my team do. But, we're working with Ad Net Zero. We are coming to conferences like this to learn about what other people are doing. And I think that's really, really important. So don't panic about it and feel that, you're not doing enough. I think little steps can make a massive difference. And I think that's where to start, really.
Absolutely. Just take ownership, do something, don't do nothing. Yeah. Marcela, do you want to add something to that? And then I'm gonna touch on something after that about greenwashing, because I think there's a fear, there's a flip side of, if I do too much, I'm going to get called out. I've made a mistake. I'm greenwashing. But go first with what they could do, what the actions are.
Yeah, I think the choice nowadays is so varied, right? You can partner with startups that are more sustainable. You can take them up as an API partner. You can take up the self-service platforms. The options are endless. But also what I think is really important for brands to remember is that there are 17 United Nations sustainability goals, right? So there are so many different ways in which organizations can be sustainable. Ecology and CO2 emissions reductions, of course, is one of them, which we are here to talk about, but also things like building sustainable communities, gender equality, and so on can fall into the fold of being sustainable as a brand.
I think that's fair enough. And that's good advice, and there's those takeaways. There's other small things. I'm going to shout out something here. When we were in Cannes 2 weeks ago, one of the things I have a big issue with this, there was so little sustainable elements on certain beaches. Like, for example, there was no access to water. There should be refillable water fountains in very hot climates. It's on basic rights. So there's little things that companies can do on a basic level. We're talking big. We're talking large-scale emissions. I mentioned, though, just then green hushing. What was it, Casey? Green hushing, not greenwashing. I'm going to go down a different rabbit hole now. It's that green hushing, isn't it, of going, shit, should I say something and get it wrong? Am I nervous about getting it wrong? And I think a lot of brands are going, we don't want to get called out because there are elements to what we're doing that aren't necessarily green. And I know who it was. It was a drinks manufacturer, Britvic, I think, that was saying, ultimately we do fruit shoots, which are plastic. But what we're doing is we're going as far as we can to make these recyclable. We're doing all these other initiatives, but they felt very nervous about putting the word sustainability in any of their campaigns. That's a big end of the spectrum. Have you seen that? Do you think there's a nervousness about, I'm going to get it wrong again, green hushing? I just like greenwashing, but yeah. I'll go with green hushing.
Yes, it's a real thing. We do see this a lot. We have clients who take us on lovingly and we work together beautifully. We have renewals coming with them. So we know they are fully committed to being sustainable, but they would not go and do a written piece about this for the fear of scrutiny. So the scrutiny is real. What we always advise our clients, and we host regular sessions with empowering client and agency teams in giving them the confidence in understanding, being able to stand up in front of their teams and explain with clarity, fully, step by step, what we're doing about reducing those emissions. And when you are clear, transparent, and you're willing to have that discussion, there is nothing to fear. We are constantly realigning our methodology. We are constantly paying attention to latest legislation and do updates within that space, of course, and always communicate this back to our clients, which I think in turn builds confidence in us with them. But I think this will take time. They are still also trying to focus massively in scope 1, scope 2. Digital emissions being scope 3 is less of a talked about topic, but now that we know, they can also use that in the sustainability reporting on a quarterly basis as a tangible reduction. Then brands are moving away from talking about offsetting, they are talking about reducing, which again is a massively empowering move.
I think then, and I'm going to pass to Rachel, so let's think about it in a slightly different way. Is it a feeling of green guilt? I'm not doing enough. I'm not focusing enough. Is it that more as well? Have you found that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, I think it's suddenly become such a hot topic in our industry, hasn't it? And I think naturally with anything like this, people do panic a lot, and they feel like they rush into these things and, we need to do everything we can without really sort of sitting down and thinking about what are our capabilities as a business. I would definitely say in the media and advertising industry, obviously a lot of these topics also sometimes budget sits with a separate department in CSRs. And I think the important here is it to actually involve your marketing and comms team into things like this. So, you have a plan in place on how you're going to communicate what it is you're doing effectively. I think that's really, really important. I think in terms of sort of greenwashing, I think sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not, to be honest. I think sometimes companies don't go out intentionally miscommunication and reporting on things, but they just don't fully understand it. So I think there's still a lot of education that's needed within businesses and within the industry to understand how it works effectively. And I think we're making progress, which is great, but obviously there is still a long way to go in that.
Perfect. We're down to the last minute, and we're obviously going to be really keeping to time. So I'm curious for both of you. We talked about, and one of you mentioned, sorry, let me pick this up. One of you mentioned, I think, that it was about performance. Look, this is actually working. Being sustainable works. Is there a flip side that not just it works, it makes employees also feel more satisfied? We're retaining people because of the efforts and being able to have that badge of saying we are sustainable. Which is playing out more? Employee satisfaction, performance, doing the right thing, Rachel, to you first. What is it?
So I think in terms of sort of employee satisfaction, I think, sustainability is now part of the corporate agenda. And I think certainly what I'm seeing in organisations is that talent acquisition teams are paying a lot more focus to ensuring that companies are doing their bit to be more sustainable and have a proper framework in place. And I think the reason for this is that if you do want to attract talent into your business, especially younger generation, they are now spending a lot more time looking at brands, brand values, what brands stand for, and they are smart about it as well, that they know when they can call bullshit, basically. So, and I think this is really, really important. And in terms of, so it sort of spans in terms of talent acquisition. I think in terms of employee retention as well, there are a lot, what I've been seeing in our industry is that a lot of people have been going out and getting qualifications and in this space, which is great, so they can bring that knowledge in-house and be utilised by their organisations to really help them look at their sustainable capabilities. And performance, it's a big issue around performance as well. And I think, we have to look at those sort of three key areas and see how sustainability can work together with those, but also individually.
I think that's perfect. And do you want to, Marcela, focus your bit, because it's the parting shot really, on, I suppose, what businesses need to remember as the most crucial thing that they need to take away, and for companies, leaders here to take away?
I think it's really important to feel empowered by the fact that you can be part of a positive change. You might be the first person on your team to keep hammering about these topics, as we all do, but it is immensely rewarding knowing that we're all doing the right thing, we're all leaning in, looking in depth into the problem, empowering our clients with clear, transparent skill to really be able to estimate how much CO2 of these campaigns cost us. And I think it really is about action. Don't be like to the topic of what was happening on stage just a minute ago,
don't do nothing, do something.
Don't do nothing, do something 100%. And also we see this, no now doesn't mean no never. We 100% see clients who weren't ready to talk to us a year ago, but now they are, and they're really leaning in. So patience and action, 100%.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If you remember that 20% of carbon emissions is coming from the internet advertising industry, the industry that's behind these, and with so many of us here, 10,000 of us here at MadFest, we all have a part to play. It's a big part, and I hope people take away from this that action is needed. And do have a chat after this with Rachel, with Marcela, who'll be at the back. But for now, before I welcome on stage our next panel, can we give a big round of applause to Marcela and to Rachel? Thank you both very, very much. If you head off that way.